A trend in the Kengan community is that its fans tend to try and become its characters. It's admirable, don't get me wrong, and it's a trait that I believe is shared across the muscle manga genre as a whole, which I classify as Dragon Ball Z, Baki, and similar stories. But with Kengan, I think people are much more directly influenced to get into combat sports instead of just getting into the gym, which is something I really appreciate Kengan Ashura for doing. Part of why I love martial arts manga and anime is because of those moments where I'm watching or reading a series and I can say, I know how to do that in real life. I'm sure some of you guys relate to this. So when I saw how much grappling there was in Kengan, even if it's fictionalized or exaggerated, I thought that it was necessary to learn how to feel like a complete fighter. So we're going to be talking about the central protagonist, Tokita Ohma's fighting style today. When I first started reading Kengan Ashura, the one thing that stood out to me was the Weeping Willow. And that made me realize how vulnerable you are if you know absolutely no grappling, not even defensive measures like sprawling. I mentioned that Ohma uses the Niko style, which is basically just super MMA. I feel like it's the perfect, most idealized version of what mixed martial arts is. So I got a question for Sandro. Why does Okubo exist? Plus, these days Sandro's got pretty much everyone in Omega using Niko style. But dunking on Kengan Omega is a discussion for another day. Now let's get into the actual analysis of the Niko style. The meat of this system comes from its katas, so those are really what I'm going to be breaking down in this video. This is also something I really like about the Niko style, that each kata that it's made up of is literally its own individual martial art, which makes the style switching a lot of fun to watch. So if you're looking for the shortest explanation of what the Niko style is, this picture is it. All the Niko style katas can best be described as containing concepts rather than specific moves. So although I'll be naming certain moves from each kata, I'm mostly going to be talking about the katas in terms of what real-world martial art embodies each of these four katas. Of course, we'll be starting with the redirection kata because it contains Ohma's most iconic move, and probably the most iconic move in all of Kengan, the Weeping Willow. I'm sure many of you were captivated by this move when you first saw Tokita Ohma in that alleyway fight. Now, it's obviously exaggerated in terms of what Ohma can do with it, but if I were to assign a style to it, conceptually, it's sort of like Judo or Aikido. You are able to convert an opponent's momentum and manipulate it to serve you. You might think that Aikido is closer to Weeping Willow, since a lot of the time Ohma uses it while standing, but do remember that standing joint locks did exist in Judo at one point. The Wakigatame is probably the most famous example. You might have seen it somewhere before. Remember that these are all ideas. Redirection kata is used with something that looks like boxing parries against Kuroki in the final fight of Ashura. But personally, I think the idea is best understood through grappling, which is why I use Judo and Aikido as examples here. Most of the time, Ohma uses this move while he's established control, even if he only maintains that control for a moment. Another redirection move we can look at is change of scenery, and I think the best embodiment of this is turn throws. You can learn turn throws through literally any grappling style of your choice, but for this I'd pick Judo. I'm kind of biased, and I know Greco-Roman or freestyle also have turn throws, but Judo is literally just another form of wrestling. Not to mention, turn throws like Ippon Seoi Nage are sort of its trademark. So we can say as a whole that redirection kata takes most of its concepts from standing grappling styles. Now let's move on to the water kata. This entire one is based on grappling, and it's relatively easy to understand. Ohma used a lot of it against Cosmo, and it was able to help Ohma win against a BJJ fighter. So that's exactly what the water kata is. You can basically just call it Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And you can extend it to the concept of scrambling in wrestling, or even Newaza in Judo, but given his fight against Imai Cosmo, I think BJJ is the most straightforward and best fit for it. The Bind of Pisces, for example, is literally just an armbar, and although it does exist in Newaza, it has really become one of BJJ's signature moves. As for Screw Cutter Jizo, I think the concept is similar to the Wakigatame, where it's a standing lock and then you're able to guide or force the opponent to the ground with it. Now let's get into the striking focused katas. First up is the Flame Kata, which I believe the entire Flame Kata is just boxing. If you look at Flash Fire, it's just good footwork, hit and run tactics, and so on. it's pretty straightforward understanding what this is. I find the adamantine kata pretty cool. Judging by Iron Breaker and especially Flashing Steel, I'm sure you can see this is based on karate. The entire thing is just tanking incoming hits, launching brutal punches, and so on. The closest real-world equivalent is, of course, Kyokushin karate. Longtime viewers of this channel will know I said this when I was first uploading, that in every single fighting manga, there's going to be at least one guy who either uses fictionalized Kyokushin or is based on Masoyama. So to summarize, I'm going to list the kata inspirations and the 4 martial arts you should take up to fight like Ohma. We've got Kyokushin karate for adamantine kata, boxing for flame kata, BJJ for water kata, and judo for the redirection kata. I think this specific combination makes up the Niko style most accurately, and once again, it is style switching, so this is the more manga accurate pathway to learning a real life equivalent of the Niko style. But since we know it's just manga-fied MMA, the more plain or straightforward approach is to just take MMA classes. That way, you'll learn all the main skills and how to combine them in the plainest way from the very beginning. If you are going to take the individual 4 martial arts, as always, I would recommend starting with boxing. There's not as much to think about there, it's focused on punching, and its simplicity is what makes it both appealing and effective. Unlike my personal journey, where I went from boxing to Muay Thai to a little bit of Nogi BJJ to Judo these days, when you start to learn one striking art, I would recommend that the next one should be a grappling art. Or, ideally, if you have the time, that you should learn striking and grappling side by side. That way, both spheres of fighting will be covered from the very beginning. It'll bring you a great sense of security, since you won't be missing one while focusing on the other. But at the end of the day, which specific path you want to take on your journey to a real-life Niko style is your choice. This video might seem a little plain in comparison to my other fighting style analyses, but that's mostly because of how Kengan's base for its martial arts is realistic. It's pretty easy to understand what style each character is using, and if it's fictionalized, it's pretty much based on a real style very clearly. The reason I didn't go into any of the secret techniques here is because a lot of them are straight up impossible, or they're more of an internal martial arts sort of thing. For example, standing on your bones alone, I think is more of a concept where you understand how to manipulate your own center of gravity. It's something that could probably be understood through the concept of kazushi in judo and how to maintain your balance, but it's not really a move or a style in and of itself. Like I said, this is a little difficult to break down actually because most of it is conceptual, but at the end of the day, you've got your 4 styles there. Boxing, Kyokushin, BJJ, and Judo. I'm currently working on the Galactic Heroes one, and I think it's really going to be one of my bigger videos. So once it's out, I hope you guys can support it. The poll for the next character in this series will be up soon. Once again, thank you all for watching. Be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and see you all next time.